All right, welcome back to Noob School. This is where we interview great salespeople and business owners, and we dial it back to when they got started in sales so they can tell you what they do well, what they do wrong, what would they advise you to do today as you start out your career in sales. And today, I got to tell you, truly one of my all-time favorites, Lindsey McMillion Stemann. Lindsey and I have been friends for a number of years. She is an absolute crackerjack salesperson. She's also a good business person, but I met her when she started, or when she was just starting in sales. And, you know, she's closed me. She's got money out of me on several occasions. So that's an admission on my part. But anyway, Lindsey came down here from Baltimore. She went to school at Clemson, and like a lot of others, she liked it so much she stayed in the area. Very thankful for that. And she'll tell you about her story from Clemson to now, where she owns a very successful company called LinkedIn Lindsey. It's a great name, LinkedIn Lindsey. You'll hear more about that later. That just focuses on helping people do better with LinkedIn, and she does other things associated with that. So without further ado, Lindsey, welcome. Welcome today.
Thanks, John. So fun to be here and to have such an amazing intro.
Well, I have more to say, but I only have so much I can do. Anyway, we're glad you're here. And we're also glad, being a Greenville native, we're glad that you ended up moving here and you brought some of your friends with you.
I have, yes.
Is that awesome?
Yeah, it's been great.
You're going to bring some more?
I hope so. Only the good ones.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're a little choosy, right?
Good, absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. And we know you went to Clemson. Tell us what you majored in and how you got into sales and how you decided to get into sales.
Yeah, I thought about this question and I was wondering how far back you wanted me to go.
Sure.
Like selling boiled hot dogs on the sidewalk in my neighborhood as a young girl. Yeah. So my dad was a salesman, and I really think that in hindsight, it's just been in my blood. Uh-huh. I had 2 internships at Clemson. My Bachelor of Science degree was in graphic communications, and we were required to do 2 internships. And so I did mine as a graphic designer, sat behind a desk 40 hours a week, designed really cool stuff that ultimately mostly didn't go to production, which was really frustrating to me. So I thought, okay, if I can't create it and voice my opinion, maybe I'll sell it. So I decided through those 2 internships what I didn't want to do, which was be a graphic designer. And I decided to go into sales. And what was really cool was the opportunity I had in the DC area, the intention. They hired me as the executive assistant to the president and vice president for first full 12 months with the intention of going into sales. So I really got to learn the ins and outs, the back end, build relationships. We were a 3-shift printing operation, 2 union shop, selling custom manufacturing. So it was a great experience. So that when I launched into sales, it was a head start.
Yeah, because you had all of that knowledge.
Yes.
Because you had a year seeing behind the curtain. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. We talk about that. And I know you've read some of the book, maybe not the whole thing, but we talk about that in the book. I didn't do a very good job of that myself, but I would tell the noobs, the new people, learn it, man. Learn everything about it because it'll help you be more valuable to your prospect.
Oh, it's so true. Well, and I was even given an opportunity to take over for a sales rep who went on maternity leave in that first year. And so to get to work with existing clients and start to create my own voice was a really awesome opportunity. So within the first 6 months of being a sales rep myself, I sold over $1 million in ink on paper, which is so crazy.
Wow, ink on paper.
Ink on paper, yep.
So backing up a little bit, one of the questions I get a lot from the noobs is about the interview process. How do they prepare for it? How do they nail it? And I'm sure you did very well at it. But what would you recommend to them they do to get ready for a big interview?
So when I was reading your book, one of the stories you told was actually you were picking on yourself and you said you were calling the IRS and you said, so what do you guys do?
Yeah.
And the person said, well, we're the IRS. And you're like, oh, the least I could have done is spent 60 seconds like checking out who this is. A minute, right?
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, it took me back to when I was first launching out of school, and I'll never forget one of the interview tactics I was taught was learn about the company that you're interviewing for and come prepared with questions. Yeah. But now being in sales my whole career, what a great sales tactic too, right? Yes. To not have all the information, but just enough to ask curious questions.
Right. I agree. And one of the things I've learned in the last couple of years is people will go in there and they'll ask the person, they'll try to be like an interested interviewee and say, well, how is your business doing or something? Like, you could have Googled that.
Right.
Don't ask them anything you could have Googled. Ask them something more interesting, I would say.
Yes.
Okay, so you started with the print to paper business back in Baltimore, and you sold $1 million your first sales year. How did that go from there? And tell us about your transition from throughout.
So I'll make it the long story short, and that is I started learning about commission structures and also just the disconnect between being a salesperson and selling a product that I had very little control over. There were dozens of hands touching the product that I was ultimately presenting to the client. Right. And so it was challenging. It was a really challenging sales experience. And when I moved down to Greenville about a decade ago, a little over that, I stayed in the print industry, had a great experience. If there's one thing I was going to keep consistent, it was at least the industry. Yeah. So I did that for a little under a year and then worked for a startup, a software as a service company. And that was a whole different experience, right? That's actually when you and I met. Right. And I had my first formal sales training. And that transformed. I mean, I'm just so grateful that leader invested in me as a salesperson to actually learn sales tactics. Yeah. I mean, right? I had really just been winging it up to that point. Right. So having a process and getting to practice and role play, as uncomfortable as that is, that's the time to do it. Yeah.
So yeah, on that point, I agree with you. I winged it for the first couple of years. And, for the noobs, you can wing it and you can kind of get away with it and you can kind of do okay. But as soon as you get some good sales training, you're like, oh, it's so much easier.
So much easier.
Particularly, for example, not trying to sell everybody.
Right. We're not a fit for everybody. Because that's just the truth.
We couldn't be.
Yeah, that's true.
We couldn't be a fit for every single person that's a lead. So let's figure out which ones are a fit. Let's do a good job for them. So
that's right.
A lot of good stuff there. So you ended up back in here, and I know you worked for that one startup, and then eventually you got really into LinkedIn, learned it inside and out. You eventually launched your business. How long ago was that?
So I've been doing this for almost 9 years. Okay. I launched the first expansion of another company, and then it was time to part ways. Had an amazing experience and launched McMillion Consulting, as you like to call my business. I love that, LinkedIn Lindsey, which is how I'm known, thanks to you. Yeah. About 5 years ago. So I've been, trained thousands of people across the country, spoken internationally. We train sales teams, recruiting teams, work with a lot of executives around the country. It's a blast. Right.
Well, I'll say this. When I met Lindsey at a training class, we were sitting next to each other at this class you're talking about. I don't remember what we were training on. Do you remember?
Gosh, I don't know.
I don't either.
A lot of stuff.
It was probably a lot of
that
stuff.
I was not very good at.
But Lindsey, she introduces herself. She goes, "What do you do?" And I tell her, and she goes, "This is what I do." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Well, why would I be that interested in LinkedIn?" I really had not given it much ado at that time. And you're like, "Well, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't be, but." If someone doesn't know you, John, because most people around here know you, but if someone doesn't know you, they go to LinkedIn, they look up your profile, and yours doesn't look so good.
Do you remember what it looked like?
Yeah, it was ugly. It was incomplete. What was it?
It was a picture of you and your sweet dog, Poppy.
Rowdy. Was it Poppy?
I think it was Poppy.
In the backpack?
Okay. Hiking. Yeah. And so here's John, this successful business person, right? Great career, awesome story, charismatic, mentoring. I mean, all these cool things, right? On and on. And John's LinkedIn profile had misspellings, had a profile picture of him and his dog hiking in the woods, right? And part of it, John, from my memory was that you just didn't know what you didn't know.
I didn't know what I didn't know. And
I remember you saying, well, I have a good budget for Google AdWords, right? So when you Google my industry, my company website's going to be one of the top search results.
Yeah.
I said, well, let's do that. Let's just put it to the test. And I saw beads of sweat starting to pile on your forehead, right? And so we did. And thankfully, your website was the top search result. But guess what was number 2?
Yeah, my LinkedIn.
Your LinkedIn profile. Yeah.
So, it was a great way to make me the prospect aware of the situation and honestly decide whether or not it would be helpful. And then I'm like, well, great, Lindsey, let's we get together sometime and talk about it. Just try to slough it off. And she goes, well, I got my phone right here. Why don't we just go ahead and pull out calendars and put something down? I'm like, whoa, okay. So we put it down and we had a meeting at my office. And before the meeting, she called and said, just want to make sure you know what we're going to go over at the meeting and how long it's going to last. And also, if you're okay with it at the end, if you're okay with what I'm proposing, then I'm going to go ahead and ask for your business credit card so we can engage. I'm like, holy cow, unbelievable. Like, no way am I giving her that card, but I said, okay. I said, okay, I'll give it to you.
You did.
And then she shows up and just went by the numbers and we got to the end and I kind of forgotten about the credit card thing. She goes, well, if we're going forward and need that credit card, I just reached in my pocket, gave it to her, and she ran it through.
All right.
Golly,
that was great.
You crushed me. You didn't crush me. You helped me. Yeah. You really helped me. All those things you did were not tricking me into something. They were helping me. I hope everyone looks at my LinkedIn profile. It's a pretty good profile now.
Yeah. Probably needs a little refresh.
It does.
It's been a while.
Well, I'll give you my credit card.
There we go. So good.
Did you tell us something about sales that you thought was true that turned out not to be true?
That I thought was true that didn't end up being true. Well, I would say that having the expectation that you're going to get it right the first time, it takes a lot of practice. Even like you mentioned in your book, John, about the characteristics and the qualities of good salespeople, you still have to practice.
Yes.
And humility, I mean, gosh, I, like many people, are their own worst critic. And so having this expectation that I was going to nail it the first time, every time was just, I mean, I was beating my head against the wall. So I think just accepting that you're always going to be learning and that you always need refreshing too, right? Like your LinkedIn profile needs a refreshment. All my sales skills always need refinement and refreshment.
Lindsey and I are always going to one training or another. We just continue to do it because we know it works. But you keep talking about practice. I don't think a lot of the noobs are aware of just how important it is to practice before you go into an interview or a sales situation, even if it's with your roommate or your friend. It's just to say, here's my script, here's your script, and let's just go through it. And if this one doesn't work, we'll try it again and try it again. And I can't tell you how many sales calls I've been on that we've practiced beforehand, like me and Dustin would practice. We'd go in the call, and then the people were just completely compliant. Just however we wanted it to go. They would just follow right along because they hadn't practiced.
Right. Well, and we've heard the phrase before, it's not real until it comes out of your own mouth.
Right.
So you can have all the written scripts in the world, but until you actually use your own words and hear your voice and your inflection and put your own personality to it, it's not real. And so I totally agree with you that actually verbalizing the practice is so important.
Yep. And some of our successful folks that we have on, Lindsey, some of them end up being great salespeople. They keep working for bigger companies. They don't have a lot, the business responsibility, but they make a lot of money and they get really good at it. Some of them become management, like sales management types at bigger companies, and some of them become entrepreneurs like you did. That's a very hard route to take, but it's also incredibly rewarding, when it works. Can you tell us about that decision process in your head to leave what was a very good job with this expanding the company and opening up your own thing?
feel so thankful that I had the experience of sales because there is no question that when you are the business owner, you are the salesperson, period.
Right.
No matter what you're providing, service, product. And so when people use the phrase, oh, I'm not a salesperson, you absolutely are. The book Daniel Pink wrote, To Sell is Human, is such a great book to reference as well because it really reframes this idea of the S word that people don't like using because there's a lot of bad salespeople out there.
Yeah.
But guess what? There's a lot of bad doctors out there and bad teachers. I mean, right? It spans the gamut. And so when I decided to launch McMillion Consulting, again, was blessed to have the opportunity already under my belt of hunting the deals, closing the deals, delivering on the deals. And so I didn't feel like it was that risky in that sense. It was really just starting to make all the decisions on my own. That was probably the more unknown part of the experience.
Interesting, because and again, I think this is more entrepreneurially advice, but I tell people all the time when they say, I want to be an entrepreneur, like, well, you'd be smart if you link it very closely as possible to something you already kind of have a universe in.
Yes.
You know it, you know who banks it, you know who the prospects, who the customers are. You might even have some customers that'll start with you, and then it's really not like you're just rolling the dice and saying, I'm going to go start making towels or something. I mean, something that you know a lot about, and you had that. So you had to add bookkeeping and marketing and some of those things.
Sure, exactly. And so I just was reminded of a recent sales lesson just last week where a good friend, a mutual friend of ours, Walker McKay, gave me the advice, especially in my space of, for example, when I'm teaching or training sales teams, there are 3 things I can guarantee your sales team. The material. I can guarantee you it's top-notch, best of the best, right? Because I'm controlling that, right? Let's be honest. Yep. The second is the delivery of that material, which is me. You're getting me. And the third that I can't actually guarantee, and actually you're responsible for owning this part of it, and that is ultimately the result, right? Yeah. So I can equip your team and give them all the tools in my tool belt. But it's up to them to believe it, own it, practice it, implement it, make it a habit. Yeah. And so I think that when we're just thinking about all of the different tools out there, it's what do you decide to own and what are you going to decide to, move the needle on and commit to. So.
Right. Yeah, people have to buy in. They got to buy in. What are the things that slowed you down when you're ramping up your business sales-wise? Mistakes you made, would tell them not to make again?
Overthinking it. Oh my gosh, overthinking it. So I'm jumping ahead with our Colbys. Okay. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a 7762, which means I am a high fact finder. Yeah. So I need just enough information. Yeah. But I'm also a high quick start. So when I have just enough, I go.
You act.
I act. Okay. And then I have high follow through as well. The 2 means I'm good at envisioning future, which makes me, primed as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
So the question of overthinking kind of gets me stuck sometimes in my fact finding. Yeah. Because I might not feel like I have enough information to make that phone call. Yeah. But ultimately, at this point in my career, I've had enough experience, and that's just something that comes with time and repetition to be able to say, okay, I have just enough, and don't know, I can admit that. I can say, John, that's a great question. I need to get back to you on that. Yeah. Or John, I've never been asked that before. Let me get back to you. So overthinking for me was the biggest hurdle to
So if someone had that same situation, would you recommend they do things like just go ahead and put the call on the calendar and just give yourself, you got till tomorrow afternoon to get ready, or to give yourself something on the timer at 30 minutes?
Absolutely.
I'm going to call them.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And like you said too, doing the role playing, practicing, looking at yourself in a mirror, right? Yeah. Building that confidence and conviction.
Okay, that's good. Is there one thing you wish you'd have known when you started in sales?
That it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Okay.
people can't see how hard your heart is beating in your chest. I think going back to the overthinking thing, they overlap for me quite a bit, and that it's okay to be uncomfortable. That's where growth happens. Yeah. So I had to make a difficult call recently, which thankfully doesn't happen very often. And I knew that the longer I delayed, the more painful the whole experience for me and likely for that person was going to become. Yeah. So I took a deep breath, heart was still pounding, and I just picked up the phone. And it was uncomfortable, but I have thankfully at this point, luxury of experience and maturity to have kept it cool and calm and equal business stature, right? Yeah. And we worked through it. And I was genuine and just, we had to have a hard conversation, but we both left the conversation feeling better about it. And that was, I really think, because I overcame what I knew was going to be uncomfortable and just went for it. Yeah.
Gosh, that's such a good one, Lindsey. I think we all like everything to be happy all the time. Yeah. Everyone likes us, you know, and sometimes in business, you got to have like a grown-up discussion.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like I was listening to your interview with Marty Osborne, and we're all in the human-to-human business. Yeah. I say that all the time. Like even in my space, LinkedIn, yes, is my expertise, but I believe your goal is still to get offline, to schedule that phone call or in-person meeting and build a human relationship.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So what's your favorite word, Lindsey?
Perspective.
Perspective. Okay. Tell us about that. Why is that your favorite word?
Well, without it, we think we're the only person in the room, the only opinion, the only person that matters, right? Yeah. And perspective goes beyond other people's perspective and where they might be coming from, but also the gift of time. And realizing that, okay, that uncomfortable phone call I had to make recently, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be okay, right? It's fine. I'm here to just be an advocate and support and help people. That's why I love what I do. So perspective in the sense of time, and perspective in the sense of, you know, if you get a nasty phone call or an email, or you have a difficult situation, or you know, somebody's probably having a bad day. Has nothing to do with you, right? And having putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
That's great. That's a great word.
What's your favorite word? Has anyone asked you that yet?
Yeah, my favorite word is absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, you know, kind of a commitment word, like not just yes, but absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we're going to do this.
Very good. Or absolutely not. Do you ever say that?
No. No, never. I'll give you the credit card, Lindsey.
There you go.
I'll do it.
All right, perfect.
So let's do one last little promotion thing on LinkedIn, Lindsey, because I want them to understand what you do. There might be some customers out there. Thanks. So I'm a customer. I've been a customer for a while now. I need the refresh. But besides helping someone have a strategy around their LinkedIn page, tell us what else you do, you know, speaking, training, all that kind of stuff.
I appreciate you asking. Well, I do want to go back to the profile piece, because this is a sales conversation, and I love sales. I love selling. I love hunting. I love having the conversation, building the trust, and, you know, acquiring the new client and the opportunity to do work. And I always say, like, I teach teams and individuals how to do that through LinkedIn as an additional tool in their tool belt, right? But that's oftentimes phase two, because everybody, as soon as you start activating on LinkedIn, guess what happens? People's eyeballs come back to your profile. So the profile transformer is our 5-step trademark process that we take a lot of executives and business owners and leaders through. We interview them, write the entire profile, and launch it for them. So it's taking all the guesswork, all the heavy lifting, giving you the microphone, pulling out your story, and writing the whole thing. And LinkedIn's become much more visual. So it's so much more than just a resume anymore. It's really, okay, I got you on the profile. Now I got to keep you there, right? So how do I educate you, inform you, tell the story, and how do I get you off of LinkedIn to have the conversation with me? So the profile transformer, we do dozens and dozens and dozens of those every single year. And then I love speaking engagements. So I speak at a lot of conferences. My favorite speaking engagements are sales incentive trips. So my last speaking engagement before the pandemic was in Mexico. So I was hired to speak at this global meeting for the top sales performers within this company. it was a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, I got paid to be there. I brought them a bunch of value and excitement, and they were already successful, but they wanted to be better.
Yeah.
And so it was so much fun to just be with high performing, high achievers and equip them with even more horsepower to just continue to crush their goals.
That's great.
So yeah, I mean, at this point, I've literally helped companies generate millions of dollars. It's so rewarding, and it's a win for them and double win for me.
Well, we're mighty proud of you.
Thanks, John.
And thankful that you're here on the call with us today. If you want more from Lindsey, I think you can find her on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, yes.
Me too, by the way.
That's right.
We're thankful for you being here and for being part of the success formula here in Greenville.
Thanks so much, John.
Well,
this was great.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Lindsey. Hey, it's John here. Thanks for listening today. Please check out noobschool.org. That's my website. That's where we have other videos and content that can help you get started in sales.